There's this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp, Michael.
Yeah.
Rippe.
Oh, the Ripper?
Hey, is that what they call him?
Yes.
Riper?
That's what I believe.
He's some chief
Ripper.
something officer for some Bitcoin poker thing, but super analytics guy.
Okay.
He put out some good stats that we need to chit-chat about. There's this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp, Michael.
Yeah.
Rippe.
Oh, the Ripper?
Hey, is that what they call him?
Yes.
Riper?
That's what I believe.
He's some chief
Ripper.
something officer for some Bitcoin poker thing, but super analytics guy.
Okay.
He put out some good stats that we need to chit-chat about. Cleveland.
All right, good morning to you. Thanks for joining for another week of the Morning After Football. Today is the morning after week 5, Monday, October 7th, 2024. And we're doing it. We're back here on the West Coast live early in the morning, talking football, answering all your hard-hitting questions, whether it's real, fantasy. We got it all. Again, we'll be joined by my guy, Terrell Bush, in just a little bit, in about 15 minutes here at 10:45 a.m. Eastern. Not going to bring on any fantasy analysts because I'm going to talk specifically around fantasy with you all today. And that's unfortunate because I play in plenty of fantasy leagues. And you know what? I checked the scores. I was off the grid this weekend. Check the scores as I come back, and I'm taking L, just losses across the board. But it's not about me. It's about us. It's about what we're doing here. So thank you for joining us across multi-streaming platforms on YouTube, X, Instagram Live. If you're on Instagram Live, you're probably like, what is going on? He's doing sports on Instagram. I don't know. We're there now. Maybe we'll move to LinkedIn and Facebook sometime later this week. Been here each Monday. We'll be back next week as well. Not every Monday morning, but most. There's a lot to talk about after week 5 because as much as you think you know what's going on, it all changes. That's the NFL. No one knows anything. Let's start in the NFL with the rookie quarterbacks. And I want to dive into some of this because a lot of talk about this quarterback's better than that quarterback and the rookies and this. And there are 3 rookie quarterbacks right now that are taking the NFL by storm, if you ask me. We'll start with the main guy. That's Jaden Daniels. In Washington, he's got the Commanders out to a 4-1 record. They lead the NFC East, and that's really because of how impressive he has been. Another victory. They've won 4 straight, so he started with a loss. Now he has 4 straight wins. Jaden Daniels, the number 2 pick, has Washington up in the division over the Cowboys. And that's impressive. And then you think about who's the first pick. Caleb Williams was getting a lot of heat at the start of the season. But if you look at the NFC North, you see the Chicago Bears right there at 3-2, running off 2 straight victories. And Caleb Williams had a fantastic game in week 5. Chicago did get the victory 36-10 over Carolina. They are 3-0 at home. That's right, the Bears 3-0 at home. Caleb loves Chicago. Chicago loves Caleb. You love to see it. Now, I meant to tell you that if you're in the chat and you have a question, put it in the comments. We'll definitely showcase, answer it, and so forth. What's going on to you, Green Rock Cards and Collectibles? One more rookie quarterback we didn't touch on that I want to touch on, and that's Bo Nix. Bo Nix getting a lot of heat. He's not good enough. The Broncos are a joke as they start 0-2, and yet there the Broncos are at also 3-2 with another victory this weekend, this time over the Raiders, winning 34-18 yesterday. And an impressive Bo Nix performance, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, and he led the team. And those Broncos unis, man, they should bring those back, not just for one game, but for all the games, especially in Denver. Those are some of the top uniforms in football and maybe all of sports. So the rookie quarterbacks, if you put them together, you got Jaden Daniels 4-1, you got Caleb Williams 3-2, and then you have Bo Nix 3-2. That's a 10-5 start to the season from your 3 rookie quarterbacks that are playing. There is word out today, this morning, that maybe in New England, Drake May will get the start. We'll monitor that situation, see how he performs. But so far, those early draft picks that are playing at the quarterback position are leading their teams to victory. And so if you're a fan of those teams, congratulations. You'll love to see it. All right. We've got another, period of time. If you're here, make sure you share, repost, and subscribe. Appreciate the 100 different eyes across the platforms listening, watching, and reading. Of course, make sure you're following on X where you can get all the information. Every Monday morning, right before this program starts, the box score breakdown is dropped on X. And that's where I like to look through some of the box scores and check out some of the different details that I see. And so let's go through them right before we get into the football week with my guy, TB. And so I'm going to showcase these 9 takeaways that I have specifically from this week. Let's see if I could get a better share up here. Try this format a little bit differently. Hold on 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So as we see in the 9 major keys from the week that was in the box score breakdown, here's what I am checking out. My observations start in Minnesota. They are the only 5-0 team in the NFL. Another big-time defensive performance, a touchdown from Andrew Van Ginkel. He picked 6s, 63-yard return on Aaron Rodgers, and then 2 more interceptions. Minnesota is not only doing it offensively, the defense has been awesome. They get the victory in London, 23-17. Josh Allen, he had a day to forget, 9 of 30. We're talking about Josh Allen at the first couple of weeks, like Buffalo can't be stopped. Buffalo's been getting stopped recently. He loses the battle against his former teammate, Steph Diggs. 9 of 30, ends with a concussion, 131 yards. Not a good day for Buffalo, not a good day for the quarterback. And the Bills are now 3-2 as they lose an AFC matchup between Houston and themselves, which could come back to matter later in the season if they're talking about either home field, seeding. So something to monitor. Caleb Williams, I just mentioned, he's playing better and better each week. Look at the numbers this week, 20 of 29, 300-plus yards, 2 touchdowns, a rating over 125, and the Bears 3-2 get the victory. Easy. They're 3-0 at home. Let's move to Cleveland. The season continues to slip away as Deshaun Watson continues to be the quarterback. I can't understand it other than they have a lot of reasons financially to keep playing him. But if you're one of those other players and on that organization, how can you keep coming to work thinking that you're giving yourself the best chance to win? Because Deshaun Watson is just not the answer. He's playing quarterback like a complete joke out there. And Jameis Winston is just sitting there with the clipboard. Look for them to make a change. At some point, the heat will continue, but Cleveland's season is quickly slipping away from them as they lose again. All questions about the Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow and his wrist from the offseason have to be put to bed. Joe Burrow was incredible, 30 of 39, 392 yards, 5 touchdowns. Even though the Bengals lost, they're 1-4. They're very, very close to being out of the playoff race. But I'm going to stick with the Bengals only because that AFC looks open for a wild card. They've got an easier schedule, but it can't just be Joe Burrow slinging it. They're going to have to get help other places. You can't lose games when you got 5 passing touchdowns. The Bengals did just do that on Sunday, another loss. How about the Colts? They lost too, but Joe Flacco, again, with an incredible performance, 359 yards, 33 of 49, 3 touchdowns in a losing effort. Jacksonville gets their first victory of the season. They go to 1-4. The Colts 2-3, but it's not because of Flacco. He's been incredible. I think that's 7 or 8 straight games where he's had 2+ touchdown passes. Kyren Williams scored again, and if you didn't know, he's got a touchdown in every game this season. And if you go back to last season, 3 in the past last year. So he's got 8 straight overall. That leads the NFL. Put it this way. Kyren scoring touchdowns is the new McCaffrey scoring touchdowns weekly. Bo Nix, I talked about it at the start. He was awesome on Sunday. He's been great coming forward the last few weeks. Denver 3-2. People sleeping on Denver. They are 3-2, but more importantly, their rookie quarterback is getting better and better. He had 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing this weekend. Kirk Cousins, let's finish it off. We talked a lot about quarterbacks, most of them in losing efforts, some in winning efforts. Kirk Cousins was absolutely unreal, and I know this game was on Thursday, but we have to touch on it. 42 of 58, 509 yards, 4 touchdowns, just absolutely scintillating. And Atlanta, 36-30 over Tampa. They are 3-2. The Falcons started slow, but they've gotten hot over the last few weeks. That is the box score breakdown from week 5 in the NFL. And so when you think about it, it was an exciting week for the quarterbacks, for the football teams that won, and maybe not so much for the teams that lost. Now, a bunch of you in the comment section asking the questions. Appreciate it. We're going to bring you in soon and talk about these questions a bit. Big shout out to everyone listening, following. Shadow Chasers talks about the rookie quarterbacks being 10-5. Yeah, it's an incredible stat when you think about it. No one's talking about it. And if you actually run it back to what they're doing recently, I think over the last 3 weeks, they're undefeated, if I'm not mistaken. So it's at least the last 2 weeks, pretty incredible performances out of these rookie quarterbacks across the league. We're not looking too deep into the Bills this week, as my guy, the Mafia Members podcast, talks about. And then, of course, the sadness of Dontavian Wicks, my guy in fantasy football this week. He had a dud. We'll talk all fantasy a little bit later. We're going to talk real football right now because it's that time that everybody likes to listen in to one of my favorite analysts, one of my favorite guys. He knows a lot about what goes down in the NFL. We're going to get his word across the league right now. Let's welcome him in. What's going on, TB? Good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning, Rip. Another week goes by and another episode of the Morning After Football, man. I'm ready to go. How you doing today, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing as best as I can. I don't know if people don't realize I've been traveling across the world. It feels like I don't have a lot of sleep, but I'm here in the studio ready to rock and roll and get your thoughts on the epic week. I mean, we saw a lot, and obviously I just touched on the quarterback play, whether it's from the rookies who have been performing really well across the board. I mean, Jaden Daniels, MVP potentially, Caleb, Bo Nix, both leading their teams in nice performances. And then you look to the older quarterbacks or the sort of vintage guys like Cousins, Flacco, Burrow in a losing effort, Lamar Jackson, incredible. Quarterback play has been interesting across the league. In the league, week 5, it felt like this week was the type of week where you think you know everything and then it flips. And that's what the NFL does. It makes you feel like you don't know anything all the time. So what are you feeling like from week 5? And then we can go through some of the games and break some thoughts that I have to ask you down.
Definitely. So like you already alluded to, man, quarterback play is taking off. We're seeing some of our guys, like you already alluded to, the rookies that are playing spectacular. Jaden Daniels in the DMV is turning it up a notch, man. And he has everybody out there raving. I have some friends from down in DC, and they say their Sundays are now the best days ever when they weren't before. For the foreseeable future, they will be. For the next 10 years, they will be. Caleb Williams, who's getting his feet up under him now. Man, you see the connection with DJ Moore yesterday. He's looking well. He's looking good. Bo Nix out in Denver with that defense and Sean Payton and those guys and Bo Nix. He is someone coming into the NFL who had a lot of starts in college, and we're seeing it. And it's just looking beautiful to see. We're seeing the experience from him that is showing its face. And just like Lamar Jackson, man, going to Baltimore and seeing the MVP caliber play from him. Joe Burrow, the MVP caliber play from him as well in a losing effort. Kirk Cousins on Thursday night, who gave us one of the best Thursday night football games we've seen in a very, very long time. So like you said, man, it's been great quarterback play across the league, a bunch of performances, great performances throughout this past weekend. And I'm ready to get all into it with you, man. Let's do it, man. Let's go.
Okay, let's go with this right now and start with let's go back to Thursday night. I know we like to break down yesterday specifically. This is the morning after, but if we don't talk about Thursday at all, I think we're missing a point here. And so talk to me about Thursday night's performance, because Atlanta was about to lose that game for a while. And somehow Atlanta gets it to overtime and wins, and Kirk Cousins incredible. And both teams are now 3-2. So when we look at the NFC South, a division that is clearly up for grabs now between, I think, three teams, beginning with New Orleans, who started hot but is now 2-2 and faces a Monday night game against Kansas City. And if they win, they can tie both Tampa and Atlanta. But we saw Kirk Cousins coming into his own. We saw that offense really get it humming, whether it was, Kyle Pitts getting in the action. We saw, a big Drake London game. And then we even saw Darnell Mooney. And, they have Bijan Robinson. And then you look at Tampa and you go, well, Baker was doing well. That game, the Bucs looked like they were controlling. So when you look at the NFC South, and we're starting there, and that performance from Atlanta and Kirk, do you think that Atlanta's the favorite now? Do you think that Tampa should still be, a favorite? Or are we looking at New Orleans? Let's talk about the NFC South.
Definitely. So I think it's a 3-team race, man. You got Tampa Bay, who's looking phenomenal with Baker Mayfield, feeding off of the play that they had from last year, making the playoffs and advancing in the playoffs to the divisional round. Atlanta, who everybody had question marks with Kirk Cousins coming off of his Achilles injury. Is he going to be ready? Why did they draft Michael Penix coming out of college? What are the question marks at that quarterback position? And we see that Kirk Cousins still has a lot in the tank, and it showed Thursday Night Football. And New Orleans, who came to a fast start in the NFC South, man. They came out, the offense was humming. We spoke about it early in the year, like, whoa, we didn't see this offense looking the way that they were going to look. But hey, the last couple of weeks, we saw them kind of take a couple steps back. So we'll see what they do tonight against Kansas City. But I think right now, that performance from Atlanta, is it sustainable though, Rip? 500 total yards of offense, man. Like, that was a fun game. But at the same time, man, Kirk Cousins showed that he's still somebody that you have to account for. He's still one of the top quarterbacks in the game. He's still a top 15, I'd say top 12 quarterback in the game, man. He showed it on full display. And the thing about Atlanta was, right? The thing about Atlanta, they have all of the pieces in place, but who is the quarterback that's going to take them over the top? They had Desmond Ridder, who came in the draft a couple years back. He wasn't the answer. But now that they got Kirk Cousins, but they drafted Michael Penix, the quarterback controversy in the offseason. We spoke about it, earlier in the year with the NFL draft coming in. And I just think Kirk Cousins is showing that he is somebody that can still fling that football, and they have the pieces. Bijan Robinson, I know that fantasy holders, I know coming into the year, you guys expected a big year from him, but look, he's still getting his legs up under him and understanding that offense and what he has to do within the offense. We've seen his ability going back to Texas, but now he's still a top running back in the game, and we have to already take account for it. But somebody I want to speak to, man, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, those guys, man, out in Atlanta, Kirk Cousins is showing that those two guys right there, they've got something in them, because Drake London coming in, like I already alluded to, the quarterback position in Atlanta was a question mark. So Drake London wasn't able to show his full capabilities going into the season last year or a couple years back. But he's showing now, hey, he's a wide receiver 1. Darnell Mooney is a wide receiver 2. Kyle Pitts, 7 for 88. He had a showing as well. So it just goes to show you Atlanta right now, I would say Atlanta and Tampa Bay is in a 2-team horse, but I also want everyone to pay attention to the New Orleans Saints, because they are still here. That NFC South is very interesting, and it's something that we'll have to keep an eye on as the rest of the season goes on.
Yeah. As you talk about it, I'm looking at the standings, and I'm just trying to dive a little deeper, see what you say. But, you make a good point. But, look, Kirk Cousins coming off that injury, it didn't look good weeks 1, weeks 2, but every week is looking better and better. There's no way he can continue that. He's not going to put up 500 yards on a weekly basis. And we'll be lucky if we get another Thursday night game even remotely close to as good as this past one, because normally Thursday nights not so hot. This past Thursday night was hot. Atlanta, they do face Carolina next week at Carolina. So Atlanta's in a nice position here where they can run off another victory, and they're gonna face the Bucks in just a few weeks here again as that schedule turns over. They've got a good chance to now get another victory, and then the Bucks are going to be New Orleans coming up here next week. So an interdivision matchup there. That's what we look at in the South. Let's go to the East. I want to talk. We started with Jaden Daniels, but let's talk about those Cowboys as well, because the Cowboys, they got a last second victory, 4th down conversion. Otherwise, they lose the game. I know you're an Eagles guy. So, and then you got to think about the Giants, right? Giants go to Seattle and surprise everyone. They get the victory in Seattle without their stud rookie wide receiver, Malik Neighbors. And you're like, do we need to take the Giants seriously? Are we, am I missing them? And so when we look at that NFC East and with the Commanders on top, and yet the Eagles, they have the pedigree, and then the Cowboys, what do we make to think of a division that is clearly, I think, being slept on a little bit from top to bottom in the competitiveness and what we might see going forward?
Like I said, and I said in the beginning of the episode, and like you already alluded to, Jaden Daniels is at the top, sitting atop the NFC East, and I don't see them slowing down at all. I mean, they've scored 30 straight points in 3 straight games. That's the most dating back to 2015. That offense is humming. Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator over there, and he's showing everybody that with the talent at the quarterback position, he can do things. I mean, we saw it with Kyler Murray as well, even though they didn't get to the heights that they wanted to necessarily, but we saw the prolific ability from Kyler Murray, and it's only translating here to Jaden Daniels. So the Washington Commanders are a real threat out in the NFC East right now, man. And it's something I didn't know in year one would be at the forefront, man. I didn't see them coming out the gates humming like this. Dan Quinn has the defense balling as well. And I mean, yesterday they played against the Cleveland Browns, who we know are not looking good at all, man. Like you said, the quarterback position is a big, huge question mark. And when is Jameis going to get that call to get in there? But I mean, the Commanders can only play who are in front of them, and they're handling business week after week, game after game. And it's something to see. Like you said, the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, we had a bye week, much needed bye week early in the year. I wouldn't say that necessarily you would want your bye week to be as early as we had it, but I think it came at a point in time where we absolutely needed it because, like I already alluded to a couple episodes back, we have an identity crisis, and that's something that we need to get a hold of. Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, our defense, offensively, we need to get healthy. We need our pieces back in line. I saw an encouraging sign from A.J. Brown last week. He posted a couple pictures of Batman looking at his suit. And it shows that maybe he might be coming out of that injury, and he might be back next week. And it shows that Jalen Hurts needs him, man. He needs him defensively. We're still susceptible to big plays in the back end, and that's something that's been the problem. We're not generating enough pressure. We looked terrible in Tampa Bay. That's somewhere we don't play great football at all in the last decade. We haven't played good football in Tampa Bay. So I didn't expect a big game from us, but it just shows that we had question marks at our position going to Dallas last night. I mean, if you stayed up to watch the game, shout out to you. You are a big time football fan, because that game took an hour to get started.
It really did.
The conditions that came from over there. But I saw something too. If you stayed up to watch the Miami Cal game the night before, which also went late into the night, probably around 12, and then woke up to watch the Vikings and Jets game at 9:30
in London, right?
In London, and then stayed up all night to watch the Dallas and Pittsburgh game, then you're a true football fan. So shout out to all the football fans out there, man. But Dallas, I mean, hey, it would have been terrible for them to lose that game last night. The way Pittsburgh had played offensively, they're still getting things in order with Justin Fields. But I think for Dallas specifically, it was the first time Dak Prescott had a go-ahead touchdown pass in the final minute of regulation. He's had passing touchdowns in overtime, but in regulation, that was his first game-winning touchdown pass. So shout out to Dak Prescott. But that was a game they absolutely needed to have in order to stay afloat in the NFC East. It's still early, but you don't want to fall too much behind from a hot Commanders team. And for the Giants, they went into the 12 and they got a victory I wasn't expecting them to get necessarily, man. The way the Seahawks had played on Monday Night Football against the Lions, that prolific offense, even though they lost, I saw them coming back home and regaining some of the stuff that they had, some of the offense and some of the team play that they had from the weeks prior. But the Giants and the G-men came in there and they handled business. Daniel Jones looked pretty well without Malik Neighbors. So that was something to see. Special teams ended the game well for them from a block field goal that ended up in a touchdown. So, I mean, all throughout the NFC East, it's looking a little different than what I originally saw. I saw, of course, us atop the NFC East. We're heading into week 6 as we are now. But, I mean, hey, Commanders sitting atop, Dallas in second. We're tied for third with the Giants. So it'll be interesting to see how this all pans out down the line.
So I just want to dive in a little deeper here. So next week, Washington, and this is the matchup of the week, in my opinion. Washington plays Baltimore. So we've got Jaden, we've got Lamar. I mean, this is the early season best matchup I think that we could ask for or see. Both quarterbacks are, in my opinion, probably the two leading candidates for MVP right now. I know that might sound a little bit crazy. I mean, I know Darnold's up there, but the way that Lamar has played and the way that Jaden has played, in my opinion, I think those are our top two MVP candidates today as we sort of enter going forward into week 6. Now, they're going to match up next week. That's going to be super exciting. But it just goes to show you the Commanders' schedule, this is going to be a tough one. And then when we look at the Eagles in your squad, Eagles, they get the Browns next week. And right now, when you get the Browns and they want to start Deshaun Watson, you've got, I don't want to say a cakewalk. I don't want to say an easy win because nothing is easy in the NFL. But right now, the Eagles have a shot off their bye, get it right. You've got the Browns, then you got the in the division matchup with the Giants, a Bengals matchup, a Jaguars. So there's some time there for the Eagles to get it right, where I can easily see the Eagles getting it right. But obviously, we have the Cowboys. But a nice breakdown of the NFC East. Let's stick with the NFC before we move to the AFC, and let's touch on the North, and then we'll get to the West. The North. The Vikings are the only 5-0 team in football. They're the only undefeated team in the NFC, and the only other undefeated team is in the AFC, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 4-0. They'll play tonight. We'll see if they win and get to 5-0. But Minnesota, up 5-0 in that division, and then you look through it, it's the only division in football where all the teams have winning records because you got the Lions at 3-1 on, they're on bye. Packers and Bears are both 3-2. I talked about Caleb earlier. He's coming together. You said it. So when we think about the NFC North, do you think the Vikings are going to win that division?
I mean, Rip. I mean, like I said last week, they're winning in multiple ways. They're not just on the backs of their offense. They're not just on the backs of their defense. Well, it seems like they are because the defense is balling week in and week out, and they've got their backs on the offensive end. But yesterday, when you see the offense stalled in the second half, they weren't able to get it going. They weren't able to get it going necessarily all game, but they had some good plays throughout the game. But defensively, the Minnesota Vikings are playing football, man. They're playing football. Brian Flores has those guys flying around, and defensively, they're one of the top defenses in the league. Definitely top 5, definitely 100%. When you just do an eye test analytically, I had to do my due diligence on understanding where they are necessarily in the league, but I know from an eye test perspective, and I think from all of us sitting and watching here today, I think we have to say the Minnesota Vikings have one of the best defenses in the NFL, the way that they are playing. But to win the North is tough right now when you see all of those teams out there, the way that they're playing. We just saw the Lions, like I alluded to earlier on Monday Night Football. Man, that guy, Jared Goff, is playing football. That offense is humming. They have some question marks on the defensive side of the ball, but they have dudes in there like Aiden Hutchinson, who's a beast up front on the defensive line. So that offense is humming. That team is playing great football as well. The Bears, we just saw Caleb Williams, like I said earlier, who's getting his feet up under him. He's getting better and better and better every game, and he's looking like the first overall pick, like we expected to come in. I mean, in his last 10 quarters, he has a 70% completion percentage, 7.9 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns and 1 interception, and a 109.8 quarterback rating. So we're seeing that now, the spectacular play that we were able to see from USC, but it's more he's making plays from within the pocket, understanding that, okay, I can't make some of the plays that I made in USC with trying to scramble out, trying to do a rollout and throw the ball across the field like I was able to in college, but now I have to stand in the pocket and make precise throws and precise decisions. And we've seen that, and we saw DJ Moore yesterday have a coming out party for this season. So that Bears team also is on the backs of their defense as well. They haven't given up more than 21 points in a game this season. And I mean, the Colts were the ones to do it a few weeks back, but they were able to play teams like the Houston Texans and hold them to under 21 points. So that defense is also stout. And we also got to look at the Packers, who just got Jordan Love back. And Jordan Love, man, that guy, you could just see his mannerisms, everything is just labeled right after Aaron Rodgers, who he sat behind. You could see the off-platform throws, the way that he throws off his back foot and is able to launch it 50 yards. We saw a beautiful ball on the left side to, I believe it was Reed or Wicks that he threw that ball to down in the stretch in the first quarter. But he's able to just make some beautiful off-platform throws and deliver a beautiful football. But the Packers are also somebody offensively and defensively who are coming together as well. So that North has a big question mark over it. I don't want to say the Vikings right now are the favorites in that division, but you have to look at them as such, sitting at 5-0.
Yeah, there's some interesting details there. Let's just talk first on the Bears and look at their upcoming schedule. Because you talked about Caleb, you dropped some really good information, stats on what he's doing and performing. And you made the point about how he's staying within the pocket and just making those kind of basic plays that help you make the awesome plays, right? Instead of just having to look for all incredible highlight reel plays, he's now taking the stuff that the defenses are giving him. And that is allowing him to play better overall and allowing the Bears to win. But you look at the Bears' upcoming schedule and you go, all right, they're getting the Jaguars next week in London. Then they get the matchup with the Commanders, which can be super exciting. I mean, we get Jaden against Lamar next week. Then we get Jaden against Caleb. And then you look at from the Bears' perspective, and after they play the Commanders, then they get a Kyler matchup with the Cardinals, and they get the Patriots. So the point is, there are games in here that are going to start to give us a real clear vision on a lot of these players and a lot of these teams in sort of the pecking order and the echelon, like where we're ranking these people, how are they kind of playing out. But there's an opportunity here for Chicago to not only, stay above 500 at 3-2, but if they're going to be a serious team this year, win some of these games before they start to battle in the division with the Packers, the Vikings, and the Lions. So I'm excited to see there. I don't know who's going to win that division, and I know I put you on the spot there, but I want to have a little fun there. The other thing about the NFC North is just this: the only division in football where all four teams have a plus point differential is that NFC North, where all teams have more than plus 20 points more scored than given up. So it's impressive. They're all on a win streak as well. There's one more division we got to touch on.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Pitch a question to you, man. Who do you think in that division right now is playing the best at the quarterback position?
Man, that is tough. I would say that the playing the best. Well, I guess I'm going to have to say Jared Goff, only because you ask who's playing the best right now, and Sam Darnold was playing the best in the division, and then this past Sunday, it wasn't his best game. Not that it was terrible, but it wasn't his best game. Really, the defense carried him, the team carried him, and Jared Goff is coming off a perfect performance where he literally not only threw touchdown passes, he never threw a pass that got dropped. He also caught a pass. So I have to go Jared Goff in the moment right now. But I love all of them, and Caleb is playing exceptionally well. Jordan Love is back. So it's a really tough question. Something I think we might have to check on as we move forward. But good one. I like that you threw a question back at me anytime.
No worries. I only say it because the quarterback position within that division, we'll probably see those quarterbacks for the foreseeable future. I mean, if Sam Darnold continues to play that way that he's playing, they'll probably extend him through at the end of the season. Jared Goff, we know, is in Detroit for the foreseeable future, and Caleb Williams and Jordan Love are only getting better, and they'll get their contract. Well, we saw Jordan Love get his this offseason, but Caleb will be there for the foreseeable future as well. So we'll probably see these quarterbacks battle it out throughout the NFC North throughout the foreseeable future. So it'll be fun to see, man. That's why I had to throw that question at you.
I love it, and as a fan of football, you have to love it. And, that this NFC North looks like it's going to be something to watch if you're in the division or a fan of football for a while, and you love to see it. And so there's a fantastic story being written out there, especially in Minnesota. No one had them being the only 5-0 undefeated team in the season, especially when you remember they drafted a rookie quarterback. Unfortunately, JJ got hurt in the preseason, but wow, what a season that they are putting on up there in the North. All right, let's go to the West because we got to move to the AFC. But before we get there, we got to go out West because this is kind of the opposite of what we just talked about division-wise, where, the 49ers, reigning NFC conference champions, they're struggling. The LA Rams, injuries across the board, they're struggling. And you look at the division and you go, wow, this thing is like, all jumbled up. And we've got Seattle 3-2, the Cardinals 2-3, the 49ers 2-3. Cardinals beat the 49ers yesterday. Shocker. The Rams 1-4. You almost say that no one's out of it because of how weird the division looks. So where do we stand when we look at the NFC West?
Rip, the injuries for San Fran. We're starting to see Christian McCaffrey may not just be just another one of those pieces within that offense that's just a prolific player. He may be the most important piece for that offense, because we're seeing they're putting up points, but in the red zone, they're 1-6 in the red zone yesterday, and they've been having red zone struggles. Christian McCaffrey was somebody that you could give the football to, whether it be a screen pass, whether it be up the middle, whether it be an outside zone, and he can make those prolific plays to be able to get you those touchdowns. So if that offense isn't humming the way that it's supposed to, that defense also isn't looking the way that we've been able to see it. Greenlaw is out right now, and alongside Fred Warner, I mean, they need him. That's just not a position where, Fred Warner is probably the best middle linebacker within football. Bosa is also one of the best defensive linemen, top 3 in the league. But man, this team is not looking the way that we expected them to look. It's still early within the season, so I don't want to hit the panic button on them. And also the Arizona Cardinals, man, they have talent on that football team. They have talent. I think we all forgot how prolific Kyler Murray is, because we saw it a little bit on full display, a read option, and the way he was able to take that 60, 70 yards to the house on one of the first plays of the game. It's crazy, Rick, because when I went and watched the game back, Kyler went 8 yards. He got the read option. He went up the field for 8 yards without even passing, I think, the final 3 defenders. He put his hand up, identifying that he was going to score that touchdown. And he does that. He likes to do that. When he sees he has the lane, he'll put his hand up and he'll go and scamper off for a touchdown. So it's just crazy to see how good of a football player Kyler is. The only thing with Kyler is his size. I feel like he struggles making some of those plays within the pocket because he's so small, because he's not over to be able to see over the lineman. But at the same time, he's still able to make plays because he's an athlete like we've never seen, man. And I think that's some of the struggle when we talk about like Bryce Young. Bryce Young is small without the athleticism that Kyler has, but Kyler is able to make off-platform throws. He's able to get outside of the pocket. He's able to scamper for extra yards. So that's why Kyler is so special. They have so many different playmakers in Arizona, so they're going to win a lot of ball games. I'm not necessarily sure how far they'll make it throughout the season. I don't necessarily see them as a playoff team at this moment, but within that West, I mean, we've got some question marks going down to Seattle. Like I said, the Monday night football game against the Lions, I thought they were going to lose that game going into Motor City, but coming back home, I expected them to win that game against the Giants. I expected them to win that game, and for them to lose that game and now still be in that hunt with the rest of the pack, it's like, if you're Seattle at this point, you have to pull away. You have to. If you're going to want to win that division, you have to pull away now. While San Fran is still having their question marks surrounding their team, while Arizona is still trying to find out who they are, and while the Rams are struggling, at an all-time low under McVay, starting off 1-4, which they haven't done under McVay's watch, is something that you need right now. If you're Seattle, you need to stack these wins. Going back home, you can't have a blocked field goal at the end of the game to lose that ball game. You have to be able to take those games out. So when you look at the West overall, I think we saw San Fran being the clear-cut favorite. I still would have San Fran as the favorite within this division, but things get a little dicey when you see some of their players going down, and Christian McCaffrey still has that big question mark surrounding his injuries.
He does. And the Niners have had to deal with a ton of injuries. It's that season after you lose a Super Bowl. We hear about this regularly. The team that loses the Super Bowl usually struggles in the following year. And man, the 49ers have struggled. We'll say Brandon Ayuk finally looked like Brandon Ayuk. And I'm not surprised. I've said it. I think we've said it. A lot of people have said it. It will take time if you miss training camp to get back into condition. And so this is just a lesson to watch, whether you're playing fantasy or in general. When you hold it out during the preseason and you're not getting those reps in and conditioning wise, it takes weeks. And we finally saw it from Brandon Ayuk, who's back. The one interesting thing about the 49ers being 2-3, and you look at the NFC West, and then we're going to move on. They're 0-2 in the division, something I would never have thought coming into this season, that the Niners would not only be 2-3, but 0-2 inside the NFC West. That division's still up for grabs for everyone. Let's move to the AFC.
They gave away both of the games within that division. Remember, they were up against the Rams, and they were up yesterday 23-10 at halftime against Arizona. So you can't lose those games if you're San Fran, man, especially with all of the things that we already alluded to, man. It's tough to want to get back into the top of that division when you're consistently losing games that you should win.
Absolutely right. There's nothing else to add. And something that as the season moves along and we get towards the playoff picture, that could come into play, that we remember these weeks where they were giving away W's, what I like to say is snatching defeat from victory, the reverse of how you're supposed to do it. All right, let's go to the AFC and let's start in the East, where division is not looking good at all across the board, right? Buffalo started out hot this season, and has really just floundered recently. They lose a game against Houston where it's the rematch. They go against Steph Diggs, a big matchup that could have playoff implications for seeding purposes later. The Jets in London, Aaron Rodgers started looking, at the start of the season, I thought Rodgers looked young. He was running around. He looked good. He all of a sudden looks like he's a 50-year-old quarterback out there, and it looks like he's he's taking these injuries in game, but it looks like he's about to get knocked out one of these times with an injury for the season or something. I don't know what's going on. They don't know how to use Breece Hall and Pierce, but Garrett Wilson was okay. I don't even want to touch on Miami, complete embarrassment. And then you have New England, who I'm hearing this morning as we do this, it looks like we may get Drake May next week. So when we think about the AFC East, let's just start. Buffalo clearly sort of the cream right now, but obviously I guess we consider the Jets still there. But this division is kind of looking ugly after week 5. What are your thoughts from the AFC East?
Definitely looks ugly, Rip. Sorry about your Dolphins. I know you guys with the injury to Tua Tagovailoa, things have gone downhill from there. But I do want to start atop the AFC East because we have a lot to speak about with the two teams at the top. When you talk about the Jets, when you talk about the Buffalo Bills, starting off with the Jets, man, down in London, it hasn't been pretty the last 2 weeks. These are the type of games that you have Aaron Rodgers at the helm, and you expect the Jets to be able to pull them out with the quarterback that you have in place. Zach Wilson, for the last couple of years, he hasn't been able to take this team over the top of these ugly, gritty type of games that they have, these defensive battles that they have. When the defense is able to hold on, Zach hasn't been the one to be able to make the plays down the stretch to be able to get them over the top. When you put Aaron Rodgers in place, this is why everyone was fantasizing about having Aaron Rodgers last year, because we need to win the ball games where our defense is playing ball. And for the last 2 weeks, we haven't been able to see that. Yesterday, Aaron Rodgers, for crying out loud, threw the ball 50+ times. When you're asking a quarterback of his age to have to throw the ball that much, it's cause for concern. Why are you not running the football if you're the New York Jets? That disparity between 54 passing attempts and 14 rushing attempts when your two best players on offense are running backs is it's questionable. I understand Aaron Rodgers. I know you guys want to show that Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. We understand who Aaron Rodgers is as a talent, as a Hall of Famer. We understand, but you can't have your quarterback throwing the ball 54 times. Especially coming off of an Achilles injury and your offensive line isn't playing the best football. He was hit 25 times yesterday. And it was a sluggish start to begin with. So, we saw Aaron Rodgers. This was the 6th game that he threw 3 interceptions in his career. He's 0-6 in those games as a whole. The lack of running the football is a cause for concern, and they need to be more balanced offensively. Like I was talking about with the Ravens, who got it together these last couple of weeks. What is your identity if you're the New York Jets? What are you as a team? They're too predictable at the line of scrimmage. When you see the way that Aaron Rodgers likes to play, we've seen it for years, and this is one of the reasons why him and Davante Adams have been so good of a duo, is because Davante Adams is able to beat man coverage. He's able to play with Aaron Rodgers when he throws those back shoulder throws. If you saw the throw to Mike Williams at the end of the game that Stephon Gilmore intercepted, that was a throw that he should have threw it a little bit more back shoulder, but it was a throw where Aaron Rodgers is expecting Mike Williams' head to turn in an instant. He's expecting it to turn. When he didn't turn, Stephon Gilmore was able to get his head around first and was able to intercept a ball that fell right into his lap. But that's a play that Mike Williams, if you have the chemistry with your quarterback, is to make that play. The New York Jets offense is predicated on the players on the wide receivers on the outside being able to beat man coverage and catch the balls and make the plays that Aaron Rodgers is throwing. He's such a timing and placement quarterback that if you don't have those guys on the outside to make those plays, it can't work. And Garrett Wilson had a coming out party yesterday. Shout out to Garrett Wilson. He had a great game yesterday for sure. But that offense is predictable. Go ahead.
I just want to tell you, when you talk about a coming out party, I'm looking at the stats, and Garrett Wilson had 22 targets. 22 targets. I mean, that's insane. I mean, when you talk about coming out party, that's exactly right. So yeah, I don't continue because he did have a coming out party, but 22 targets in one game is, I mean, some receivers would love to get 22 targets all season.
No, that's true. That's true. I think he was trying to make a little bit of a point because him and Garrett haven't been able to get on point all year. So it was good to see that their chemistry is growing. But overall, man, the Jets, they just need to diversify their offense a little bit, and utilize the players on offense to their full capabilities, man. Braylon Allen, the running back from Wisconsin, their rookie, who's a power runner. They need to get him the ball more. Breece Hall has to get the ball more, man. So overall, the Jets, they look a little iffy right now, man. I mean, it's tough to see. They're last in yards per game in the NFL. They're 30th in points per game and 30th in completion percentage, which is crazy because Aaron Rodgers is at the helm. So the offensive scheme is poor. It's a little outdated. Things need to get a little bit of a reboot for them to get rolling. So that's just one team I wanted to speak on. But I mean, they have the fourth easiest schedule, in the NFL. That's what coming into the season, they had the fourth easiest schedule. So we'll see how things go.
Well, and just to tie up the point here, I think you're right. I mean, they need to find an identity that's more than just Aaron Rodgers kind of doing, Aaron Rodgers is no longer, 28 years old or 30 years old in the prime of his career where they put the team on his back and throw the ball 50 times and we're going to win. And that's what we saw in this past game. And so you're right. I think you mentioned Braylon Allen. That looks great when he's running. Breece Hall, what happened to him? I mean, he's one of the best running backs last year with Zach Wilson. You got Aaron Rodgers, and now they can't figure it out. I know this. I'm not the head coach, but if I have those two guys combined, they're getting more than 14 carries. So, they got to get them the ball. They got to get some rushing going, even if it's not working at the start. Get those guys the ball more and more often. And then we'll see what happens with Devontae Adams. Maybe he lands in New York. We'll talk about that towards the end here. We'll find out. But the Jets' schedule coming up, they get the big matchup coming up next week against Buffalo. That will tell us what happens there with Buffalo and the Jets. And then they also play the Steelers and Patriots. So the Jets are in a position where they can still get it right. It's only 2-3. It's early. They've got an opportunity there. Let's move to the rest of the division. What are your thoughts on the Bills? Josh Allen concussed, 9 for 30. That's not getting it done.
It's not winning football, Rip. Not winning football. And I mean, when you trade your number one, like I said last week, who is the guy that you go to? Keon Coleman had a great game yesterday. I mean, he had a great touchdown on fourth down. He was able to take that to the crib. But I mean, at the same time, Rip, who do you go to down the stretch? It cannot just be give Josh Allen a football and let him try to make a play out there. It has to be some sort of scheme that they put together down the stretch when they absolutely need it in order for them to win games. And I feel like that's what they're going to struggle with this year. It's who's the go-to guy? Who's the playmaker on the outside that's going to say, you know what? I'm the guy. I'm him, and I'm going to make these plays. And it can't just be Josh Allen. Like you said, 9 for 30, 131, a touchdown. Like those 9 for 30 is just unacceptable if you're Josh Allen. But at the same time, let's go to that last drive. I mean, at the last drive, when you throw the ball, when you get the ball with 32 seconds left and your back is against the goal line, you're pretty much on the 3-yard line, and you throw the ball 3 straight times. I mean, I understand your backs are against the wall. You don't necessarily want to run the ball and potentially give up a safety. Then the ball game's really over. But at the same time, you got to have the Houston Texans at least use 1 or 2 of their timeouts. You can't give Houston the ball back even though they gave it back with around 16 seconds, 17 seconds, you can't give them the ball back with all 3 of your timeouts and you're pinned against the goal line. Your punter's not going to have enough time to get enough leg to kick the ball that far. So once you have your pin back, you throw the ball 3 straight times, you don't run any clock out, then you don't let the Houston Texans use any of their timeouts. You then give them back the ball. They're able to utilize timeouts, gain some yards, kick it 59-yarder, and that's all she wrote. So, I mean, that's bad clock management. And, I mean, Sean McDermott, the head coach for the Buffalo Bills, took blame for that, for the missed clock management timing. But at the same time, I didn't like that. But all game, I mean, I didn't like Josh Allen not being able to find anybody, man. 9 for 30 looked like he was seeing ghosts out there potentially. So, question marks for the Buffalo Bills. I don't know who they go to down the stretch, and that's my biggest thing, man. Who's the playmaker that they go to outside of Josh Allen?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. You really summed it up perfectly, especially with their late game meltdown. I think about time management, game management, understanding situations. They lost and they deserved the loss. And sadly, you could chalk this one up to say, they added insult to injury for Josh Allen here. But you hope he's okay. And I'm not writing off Buffalo. Of course, they're going to have to figure some things out for sure. I don't think there's much more to talk about with the Patriots and the Dolphins. Let's move on let's go to AFC. I mean, it's too ugly. There's no point in discussing.
It will be fun. It will be fun to see if Drake May does get in there. That'll be a great storyline because we see how the rookies are playing this year. They've been playing really good football. So if Drake May could come in and provide a spark for that team and potentially grab a win next week, I think New England will be fantasizing about Drake May for the next few games and for the rest of the season.
I was going to say the Drake May thing is interesting and something to monitor, and that would give New England at least hope to, as a fan and as an organization, to see what they have in their rookie quarterback. So I do expect that change to be made soon, and we'll monitor that. Let's go to the AFC South, where we just talked about Buffalo losing to Houston. Houston wins. Houston is 4-1. Interestingly enough, when we think about the AFC South, this is the opposite of what I talked about with the NFC North, and that is the AFC South has 4 teams and none of them have a plus point differential. All AFC South teams are negative in their point differential, even though you look at the Texans, who are 4-1, they're actually minus 12 point differential. So it just goes to show you that the Texans are winning tight, and then they lost big. So, because they did get blown out to Minnesota, and all their victories have been tight. But whatever, win's a win. Houston sits at 4-1, and then you look at the rest of that division, and you go, man, Colts 2-3. Although Flacco looked good, Titans 1-3 on by this week. Jaguars 1-4. Get off no victories grouping and finally get a W. So isn't it just the AFC South a wrap already? Houston's got it. There was a lot of preseason talk. Or are the Colts still alive? Are the Jaguars going to make a run? Anything I should know?
I think we can all agree that Houston's got this division pretty much wrapped up. I don't think we'll see any of the teams within that division kind of challenge them for the division. I mean, you got question marks all throughout the other teams within that division. And I think for Houston, I mean, they've got a little bit of their struggles going on. But, I mean, they're sitting 4-1, and it's the best start in their team's history. So, at the same time, you've got the quarterback, you've got the team, you've got the mojo going, you've got the head coach, the front office. I mean, all signs point upward for the Houston Texans and for the rest of the teams in that division. I mean, the Colts, when you look at the game yesterday with Jags and Colts, fun game, points galore. We saw Joe Flacco could potentially be a starting quarterback for a team in the NFL. I don't even think potentially. I think teams need to start looking a little bit more into Joe Flacco and being like, hey, we can use him as our starting quarterback for this season. Because if you look at the sample size that he's provided with the Browns last year and now the Colts this year, and yesterday being able to go 33-44 for 359 and 3 touchdowns, I mean, Joe Flacco is showing that he is still a premier quarterback in the league. I mean, 33 for 44, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. We're not seeing that just from anybody. And I mean, he was able to gut out a win last week against Pittsburgh. And I mean, he was able to provide a spark for them in a game where we thought, the Pittsburgh Steelers would be able to win that. I mean, hey, Joe Flacco is showing some shines, and I mean, right now that's the hope for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, with Anthony Richardson, his erratic play, we spoke about that last week. I mean, the question mark surrounds Anthony Richardson. Is his health going to be a problem for the foreseeable future? I think it may be for them. I would say, hey, if Joe Flacco continues to play ball the way that he's playing ball, I think you should just insert him. I mean, when Anthony Richardson gets back, of course, we put him back on the field. But I mean, hey, it'll be a really big question mark to see. For the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence had his best game of the season for sure yesterday, going 28 for 34, 371, 2 touchdowns. Fun game yesterday and a much-needed win. I mean, if you fall to 0-5 if you're Jacksonville, what direction do you go? Is Doug Peterson pretty much out the door at that point? I believe so. I mean, I love Doug Peterson for bringing the championship to my team, but for this Jaguars team this year, it's not looking too good. I mean, but they've got some ball players out there in Jacksonville. Tank Bigsby had a good game yesterday, going 2 touchdowns, 101 yards. Brian Thomas, I mean, he was somebody we were talking about coming into the draft, and he's looking really good this year. I mean, 5 catches, 122, and a touchdown. So they've been able to be fun on the outside, but ultimately, I think this is Houston's division, man. I don't really see another team within this division. When you got Tennessee, I mean, they've got question marks under center. All of the rest of the teams have question marks under center except for the Houston Texans, and I mean, that's the most important. When you have the head coach, the front office, and the starting quarterback in place, I mean, those are all keys for success for a team. And I think the Houston Texans are the clear favorite in the AFC South.
Yeah, I think you said it very well. And I don't think it's a question anymore. Joe Flacco is a starting quarterback. I mean, he looks incredible. He just comes in and throws multiple touchdowns every game. He can run still. He's got command of the offense. He can throw every pass. And he's shown it now with Cleveland, Indianapolis. I mean, hey, Cleveland could use a Joe Flacco this season, I'll tell you that. But anyways, that's besides the point. All right, that's the AFC South. They all teams have a minus point differential, something to monitor as the season goes along. I like things like this, trends. But Houston is in the lead, got a 2-game lead there at 4-1. Let's go out west to the AFC. West champions and our Super Bowl champions defending Kansas City. They play tonight against New Orleans in a Monday night game. That should be a good one. The Kansas City 4-0. But, let's not sleep on, not that they're going to win the division at all, but a Broncos team, which were 0-2, and people were like, the worst team in football. And I said coming into the season, I actually thought the Broncos were going to compete for the playoffs and be better than people thought, because Sean Payton has always been a coach that has been able to win games. He's never had a team where he didn't win at least 7 games, and people were talking about the Broncos as one of the worst teams. Now the Broncos have won 3 straight. Bo Nix, probably his best performance of his career yet, 2 touchdowns passing, 1 rushing. He's fiery. Those uniforms are awesome, those Broncos classics. And, yeah, I'm not saying the Broncos are awesome at all, but it looks like they got something going there, especially with that Denver defense. So talk to me about the AFC West. What are we seeing, especially when you take into account what's going on with the Raiders and the quarterback change?
For sure, Rip. I want to start at this game right here. When you're talking Raiders and you're talking Broncos, it was a great ball game, but we're able to see Bo Nix week after week, all of these rookie quarterbacks coming in, and they're all positive records too. And Bo Nix, like I said, an experienced player coming out of college. I mean, he had 5 years in college, and he's stepping in for the Denver Broncos this year and being able to show that adversity and picking up and showing what he's been able to show yesterday. I mean, having his best game of the year going 19 for 27, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. But like you said, though, Rip, that defense, when you have a defense as a rookie quarterback, which all of these players do, Caleb in Chicago, good defense. You got Bo Nix here in Denver. Really good defense. You got Jaden Daniels out in Washington. Solid defense, but that offense is just prolific. So it's just, just taking off. But at the same time, when you're able to have a defense that you're able to pin your ears back on and be able to, you know that the mistakes that you make on the offensive side of football aren't going to haunt you necessarily throughout the game because you have that defense. Similar to Pittsburgh, you'll be able to play a good game. Because when you look at Denver offensively, I mean, they went 3 for 12 on 3rd down. When you're getting off the field and you're not able to stay on the field as an offense, I mean, that's cause for concern. But when you look at that defense and the way Pat Surtain is playing, Pat Surtain is probably the best cornerback in football right now. He's probably the best. I don't think it's a question. Yeah, right? I don't even think it's a debate right now. The way that he's been able to play, the receivers that he's been able to go up against, and the way he's been able to shut them down. Yeah. Oh man, the way that interception, he had 2 yesterday. That interception for 100 he took back, man, was a beauty, man. It is beautiful to see, especially somebody like me. I was a defensive back in college. Just the way that he's able to play man coverage defense it's something that, as a defensive coordinator, you fantasize over. A corner that's able to take away a side of the field is so valuable in the National Football League. It's so valuable in football because now you can leave that guy alone on the island. You can worry about the rest, and you're able to scheme around that. So for the Denver Broncos, they have that. They have pieces in place, and that's what you said earlier. They have pieces in place in Denver. They needed the head coach. They needed the quarterback, and it's coming together slowly but surely. Like you said, they had an 0-2 start. Everybody was trying to write them off, but, I mean, they're sitting second in that division right now, and it's something that we have to pay attention to. For the Raiders, they come out. Antonio Pierce, he's a good coach. He's a good coach that players play for their coach. When you have a coach that players play for, I mean, you got something. I think he'll be in place for a little while. They still have question marks, like you said, at that quarterback position. I mean, who are they really going to? Are they going to Minshew? Are they going to O'Connell? Do they look in the draft? Should they have looked in the draft from this past year? Maybe potentially went and grabbed Penix. The way that these quarterbacks have been looking, these rookie quarterbacks, this draft class may be something that we look back on as maybe an all-time great, but let's slow down there. But ultimately, when you're the Raiders, you need the quarterback. You have the head coach. You need the quarterback. They have pieces on defense. They have players like Brock Bowers on offense, who they just drafted this year, who's been looking like a stud. He's coming out to his own. 8 catches for 97 yesterday. Jacoby Myers had a solid game. But overall, when you don't have the quarterback, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. And for the Raiders, I don't really know where they go with that. So we'll see how they end off the year. But for the Chargers, I mean, they had a bye week yesterday, but we know Harbaugh. We know the system that they have in place. They've been playing solid football. But, I mean, we already know atop the AFC and as a whole. I mean, we know Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they have their question marks. We spoke about them last week. The injury bug has caught up to them a little bit, but I mean, they're still sitting atop of their division. They're undefeated at this point. I mean, hey, we'll see tonight, though. We'll see tonight how they handle New Orleans and that offense. You know, that it's been stalled a little bit, but let's see how they handle that offense. I mean, the Spags and his defense and the way that he's able to rock with Chris Jones and a bunch of other players they have in the back end, they're able to play great football. But Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, man. I think that division, we already know who it's necessarily going to be won by. I'm not personally going against Patrick Mahomes. I've done it for too long, and I've said this on other shows. I've done it for too long. You know, being an Eagles fan, that first year we went up against him in the Super Bowl, thought we had him, didn't. Yet last year, San Fran thought they had him, didn't. So I'm not going against Patrick Mahomes in that division. I think they'll win that division. Hey. Ultimately, fun to watch.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. Don't go against Patrick Mahomes. That's like my. That's like one. I have that in the playoff manifesto, which people, if you follow on that, you'll know, and I'm sure you'll hear the next playoffs. Basically, in the manifesto, it's never bet against Patrick Mahomes as an underdog in the playoffs. Just don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't matter what the odds say. You know, we saw him last time play. He took out his own wide receiver. He's just trying to make things difficult for himself so he can prove how great he really is. And as soon as you think there's no chance, he will make it possible. But a great one tonight in Monday Night Football with Kansas City, New Orleans. Kansas City is pacing that division at 4-0, the only undefeated team still in the AFC. We'll see next week if they remain unbeaten. All right, last division, then we got to get out of here. AFC North, we got, it's a flippening, I'd say, right? Because, this division is interesting in the sense that, look, I don't think that the Bengals are the worst team in this division, but you look at their record, they're 1-4. That's not great. Browns 1-4 as well. And then you look at the top of the division, we have 2 3-2 teams. Pittsburgh started 3-0, now they're 3-2. Baltimore started 0-2, and now they're 3-2. So they're tied on top, Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And then you've got both, the Browns and the Bengals 2 games back of them. So obviously Lamar has been looking better and better. And Derrick Henry and the Lamar combination is looking, better and better. And so when you look at that division, what do you see? Is it Baltimore is clearly head and shoulders above, or do you think Pittsburgh is still going to contend? And do you think that the conversation with Pittsburgh, because they've now lost 2 straight, even though Fields has been solid, what do you think the Russ conversation is there?
I think I'll start with Pittsburgh there in the last thing that you said. I mean, it's tough because, people may disagree with me at this, but when I see Justin Fields on the field, I don't necessarily see the Pittsburgh Steelers having a quarterback problem. I don't think it's the quarterback that's the problem necessarily. In the last 2 games, the defense has given up 47 points, whereas in the first 3 games they've given up 26 points. Yesterday, negative 219 yard differential in teams. 4th worst under Mike Tomlin since 2007. So the defense has been they've been getting beaten these past couple of weeks. But ultimately, I don't think the problem is the quarterback. Fields went 15 for 27, 131 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. First game of the season with multiple passing touchdowns. I think the offense needs to be diversified a little bit. Going back to what I was talking about with the Jets, I think they may need a player like Devontae Adams alongside George Pickens. I know George Pickens is a good player. I don't necessarily right now see wide receiver 1 right now. I think he may need a receiver alongside of him to alleviate some of that pressure from him so that he can get a little bit more of one-on-one coverage, and we're able to see a little bit of that spectacular play that we're able to see from him. But I don't necessarily think we see a Justin Fields problem. I think team and structure-wise, offensively, the Pittsburgh Steelers need to run the football definitely better. And Arthur Smith has to diversify the offense somewhat, man, and open it up a little bit and let Justin Fields make plays. But ultimately, that's what I think for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But when we're talking about the Ravens, man, it's hard to say. I mean, I know they're sitting right now at 3-2, but I think that team, man, is potentially one of the, if not top 2 in the league right now, man. I mean, when you look at it, they're top 5 team in points per game, pass touchdowns, total QBR, yards per play, rush yards per game, and rushing touchdowns. So, I mean, overall, what was the thing last year in the AFC Championship game? They went away from what? Running the football. This year, they've gotten back into running the football. Defensively, they have their question marks, but offensively, yesterday, the way we were able to see Lamar Jackson operate, not only with his incredible athletic ability, but throwing the football. And those were the question marks for Lamar. But down 10 in the fourth quarter, I saw time and time again Lamar being able to make plays with his arm that have been question marks in the past. Now, will we be able to see that in the playoffs is the biggest thing. That's the biggest question. But when you have that answer in the backfield, that monster, Derrick Henry, who has 100 yards, 100 total touchdowns and 10,000 rushing yards and is the first player in Ravens history with a rush touchdown in each of his first 5 games. I mean, it just goes to show you. And they've beaten Josh Allen and Joe Burrow in back-to-back weeks, who are top quarterbacks in the league. So Lamar Jackson, man, is playing spectacular football. I mean, it's just a beauty to see, and I think they are the top of that division, hands down. I think they'll win that division, and I think they'll win it pretty easily because I don't think Pittsburgh has the offense to keep up with them. They have the defense. I don't think they have the offense. The Browns, I don't really see too much from them. They have a lot of question marks in a lot of positions. I think they have one of the worst situations within the NFL, not just solely at the quarterback position. And I think for the Bengals, they've just fallen too far behind. I don't think they'll be able to catch up within the division. 5.6% of teams that start with a 1-4 start in the Super Bowl era have reached the playoffs. So 5.6% of teams that are 1-4 in the Super Bowl era since 1996 have made the playoffs. So I just think they fall too far behind. Great showing from Joe Burrow yesterday. MVP-like performance. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. And at this point, can we say that T. Higgins, I don't think they can let him go. I think they need T. Higgins. They need both just T and Jamar Chase for that offense to operate. So overall, I think the Ravens are clear-cut in that division. Who ends second, who ends third is still up for debate, but I think the Ravens will have this division.
Okay. Well, so you heard it there first. The Ravens are your pick, and I think the Ravens are in a good place. I don't want to write off the Bengals in general from a playoff standpoint, even though at 1-4, it's getting real bleak real quick. We have seen the Bengals make runs, but
I won't write them off either, Rip. I won't write them off either. Yeah. Just for the division, though.
The division, totally.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to get back what they.
I feel you. And look, you mentioned who Lamar and the Ravens have beat, and we talked at the top of the program. We're going to get to see Lamar against Jaden Daniels, which is super exciting. Coming forward now for the next week. And I don't think that Fields is the problem in Pittsburgh as well, but I do think the conversation was definitely going to start to pick up because obviously you start losing regardless. It's just a conversation, so it's something to monitor. Now, I think if Pittsburgh does lose next week when they play the Raiders, then we're going to see a question. But, maybe it might be something where we start to see little snippets of like Russ comes in for a drive and just to see what it looks like for a little difference because maybe it will help Justin get a little bit more unique kind of defenses playing against them, and if they show him a different style, we'll see. Justin's been pretty solid. I've been impressed with his play so far in Pittsburgh. That is the AFC North. That is a look at the entire league in Week 5. I wanted to do it a little differently, sort of a third through the season almost, and why not touch on each division, each conference. There's been a lot of injuries. There's been a lot of excitement. This has been fun, TB. We spent a lot of extra time together here. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you? I know you're big, doing a lot on Instagram especially, but make sure everyone can follow you and look out for your content.
Definitely, Rip. And as always, appreciate you for the platform, man. This is fun. I look forward to this week in and week out. Let's continue doing this, man. I enjoy my time on here, and I appreciate everybody that's watching, that's following, that's tuning in to all of our content, man. As Rip said, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Terrell Bush 05 or Terrell Bush NFL. You can follow me on Instagram at BTB Sports with 2 underscores. I continuously post clips from our show on there and through Twitter, so you'll be able to see fun stuff throughout the week, man, and just continue to watch us week in and week out, man. Rip brings great content, fantasy wise as well. I know you're going to get into that as well. Shout out to my fantasy team this week too, Rip. We won this week. I started Kirk Cousins, man. I was very happy for myself. But yeah, man. So thank you for the platform. Follow me on all socials. Have a good rest of the show, Rip. Thank you, man.
You're the best, man. I'll see you next week. All right, guys. What a pleasure to have my guy Terrell Bush in the house here, as always, talking football with us. It's just a great way to start Monday mornings talking the NFL. TB always brings a good point of view, good information, and he drops it here. And, he left us with how good his fantasy team was. And that's awesome because at least one of our teams was awesome this week. Mine was not. I want to touch on fantasy just for a couple minutes here. But before we do that, I want to thank all 300 plus viewers that have tuned in, commenters, people that have rocked with us all throughout the season. The show has been a lot of fun. And even though it can be challenging at times from location-wise, we're making it happen here. The Morning After Football, TMA Football, hashtag that on X if you'd like. Talk about week 5. You can follow me, of course, on X at Michael Rippey, and you'll get your answers to fantasy football questions. We'll talk football, and we love to do it. Now, like I said at the start, normally I have a fantasy analyst, but this week I decided to just be the fantasy analyst because the L in analyst stands for what happened to my teams this week. All of my fantasy teams taking the L's. You know why? Because I started the same type of players, and they all were not anywhere to be seen. It's almost like they had a bye week, but it wasn't their bye week. Let's start. Breece Hall, where was he? I don't know. I'm not the New York Jets coach. I said this earlier, but give him the ball more. I'm not sure. If you have Breece Hall, don't panic yet, but maybe he's not RB1 overall. But I don't look at these guys as someone because of a bad week or two that you need to get off of. So Breece Hall struggled. Garrett Wilson played well. You love to see it. Let's move to wide receiver. My big early season, preseason sleeper at the wide receiver position, Dontavian Wicks, inserted into the lineup. Has massive opportunity this past week for Green Bay, and he just doesn't get it done. However, when you look at the numbers and you say, okay, it wasn't a good game for him, 2 for 20, he did have 7 targets. That led the team, and that's what tells me that Dontavian Wicks will continue to be a factor in Green Bay. So even though it didn't work out this week, that doesn't mean it won't work out next week. It doesn't mean over the season you won't be happy. I'd stay with Dontavian Wicks, or if someone reacts and drops him, I pick him up. It's one of the biggest keys to winning in fantasy is you cannot overreact. You have to be patient. It can be hard. We're not trying to win in week 5. Okay, I lied. We're trying to win in week 5 because we're trying to win every week. But we have to understand we are not going to win every week. The key is to win more of the weeks, and the key is to win the weeks at the end of the season when the championship games are being played, the playoff games. So I'll take a shitty week this week if I can have a great week later. I believe in karma. Most importantly, we're still figuring out which guys we want, but we've seen some of the players and we've seen them not. We're continuing to monitor it. Fantasy, that's how you win, at least in my opinion. And so those are some of the guys that I'm thinking about after watching my week. Now let's go to the tight end position. Isaiah Likely had 2 touchdowns. Yeah, maybe Isaiah Likely is the tight end to own in Baltimore, and maybe it's not Mark Andrews. I've been saying that from the whole season, and, something to consider. But you go, oh, what about the tight end position? Well, Tucker Kraft, look at him. He looked real good for another week in Green Bay. I mean, the guy looks like the real deal, and, of course, if you have Brock Bowers, looks good. Tight end has been a tough position this year. It is a wasteland. We came in thinking there's going to be opportunity. It hasn't looked like that. That's okay. See if you can get some of those guys on board of your rosters so that you can do well. Of course, we saw big quarterback performances from unsuspecting players like Joe Flacco, Kirk Cousins. I mean, putting up massive performances. And then we saw duds from the others like Josh Allen, Sam Darnold. The point is, it's not going to be perfect every week. You have to think about how these guys have performed for most of the weeks and try to ride with the guys and stop trying to nail it every single week with a different player. That's just too challenging. It's not going to work out. So look at the guys that have done it for the majority of the season. Check out what you think is going to happen moving forward. I'm staying the course. My teams are still completely in it. I'm near the top, which is where you want to be. I've got players that can ride out the season, and here's another guy coming back soon. Cooper Kupp will be back in week 7. That's an early season injury that's affected a lot of not just my teams, but a lot of teams. A player I believe strongly in, a target monster, a guy that's going to do really well once he returns. So if you're able to just get to week 7 or maybe look to acquire Cooper Kupp, I think his value will continue to rise. Let's finally touch on special teams. A lot of people mocked, laughed, they questioned what I was thinking when I talked about drafting Brandon Aubrey all season, having a locked-in kicker. I think it's worked well this, to date. I think it's going to continue to work well. He's automatic. He gets it done. He kicks long field goals, and he's a solid lock for double-digit points weekly. Let's go to the defense. I've talked about this defense now for a couple weeks. Minnesota should have picked him up a while ago. That's a defense I want to start week in, week out. I'm not streaming defenses. I'm putting Minnesota in. I'm forgetting about them. If I don't have Minnesota, I want Denver. Those are my two favorite defenses this season. If I just want to lock in a defense, I don't want to worry about the rest. That's where I'm looking. That's a quick little touch on fantasy this week. We'll have an analyst next week. I'm not going to tell you who they are today, but they will be here. I'm excited to have them on next week for week 6 of NFL football. The morning after, it will also be a holiday. I hope you'll join us then. Right now, I've got to run to the airport to catch a flight. This has been a fun flight with all of you. Thank you for taking off with me. Thank you for taking off time to watch, listen, learn, and comment. We'll see you next week on The Morning After Football.